You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era, improv, news stories, and sometimes use our show as a platform to jam our feet directly in our mouths because our favorite flavor is the toe-funk of self-sabotage. So get your hackles prepped to be raised, find the nearest exit, and preemptively start wishing that we would just stick to imagining how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we were Raised by Rentals. Mike, is there something that most Americans treat as completely normal and expected, but you just don't give a shit about?
Oh, God. Professional sports. All of them.
That was my answer, too.
Now, to be fair, growing up, as an adolescent in Niagara Falls, I did watch basketball in the early 90s. I think most of us, during the Michael Jordan era of basketball, a lot of us were at least interested. I didn't follow it, wholeheartedly, but I did watch occasionally. And I was a hockey fan for a brief period as a child. When I was younger, I would watch the hockey games with my brother and my dad, and I would get so frustrated watching the Sabres lose that I just stopped wanting to watch. So it was like, I don't like this anymore. So
right? Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like I genuinely like sports. I like playing sports. I really like baseball. That's probably my favorite sport. I think my favorite thing about baseball, ironically, is like stories about baseball, like movies and books about baseball players, like
right.
A League of Their Own and The Sandlot are like two of my favorite 90s movies.
Those movies.
They're so good. Like I've read, books about, like baseball history. My dad had a whole like little library of baseball history books because he was into that, and I read some of his, and they're all like really interesting and fascinating. But even going to see a baseball game, in real life can be fun from time to time. But man, like sitting in front of the television, just watching baseball games like for a whole season, it's like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to fall asleep. Like, how slow these games are.
I mean, as a kid, I used to go every summer. We would go to the Rapids games because my dad he would always get season passes for the Niagara Falls Rapids. Mm-hmm. And so we would go to games all the time, and those were fun. That was a blast. But like watching baseball on TV with my brother and my dad, I was so fucking bored every time. I was like, this is so boring. How do you guys do this?
Right. It's funny. Like we've been friends for a long time, and we grew up, in the same town, but didn't meet until we were like 20 or 21. And it's funny how sometimes we're just telling stories about childhood, and it's like, hey, wait, like there's a crossover. Like we could have met at some other time because my parents had season passes to the Rapids in Niagara Falls for years, every year, and they used to volunteer for the booster club, helping the players, like find apartments or whatever in town. And like I went to the games with them, not every time because I would be bored, but I would go a lot. My brother went a lot. I worked at the Sal Magley Stadium one summer, one of my early jobs. I used to sell nachos at the nacho cart. And I'm like, dude, I bet you we were at so many of those games at the same time, just bored.
Oh, absolutely.
Like reading the book,
Yeah. Brought comic books with me every time.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. But the point here is like, I just don't really care about professional sports. It's a fandom. We've talked before about how it's a fandom, but it's not a fandom.
They even have their own Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh man, fantasy football is so nerdy, and it's like it's funny how like the the normie guys are so into fantasy football. And it's like, you guys know it's just pretend, right?
Yeah, it's literally just sports Dungeons and Dragons, guys. That's all it is.
Exactly. But it's not a fandom that I personally subscribe to. Like I like sports, I like playing them, but I just don't really care to follow the professional teams and know who all the players are and stuff. I just, I go to a game once in a while, I enjoy it, and that's good enough. And but It's an incredibly popular fandom. I mentioned Americans, when I answered that question, just because, we're talking about our own experience here. But it's like in America, in pretty much every state, I think there's almost this expectation that, professional sports is such a popular pastime that, oh, well, of course, everybody knows about it. Like, everybody,
Yep.
it's like people go to the movies, right? Everybody has seen like the hot new movie that came out that won the Oscar, right? Everybody has seen it. People talk about it like in the workplace, like
Yep.
don't even care about spoilers because obviously everybody went to see the movie that won the Oscar, and they talk about for pro sports the exact same way. Like, you know,
Oh yeah.
you probably, since you work in a workplace with other people, and I work from home, so my like water cooler stories aren't as good as they used to be, but you've probably had an experience at work in the recent past where some random conversation is like, oh, hey, did you see the Sabres play the other day, like, so and
Yep.
so was so good and blah blah, what'd you think, and you're just like, you know and you kind of end up in this like social situation where you have to decide if you want to engage and tell the truth or just, kind of go along with it just to be polite. I mean, you tell me.
It's literally every single time there is a Sabres or a Bills game, without fail. And now keep in mind, I've been at that job now for 26 years. Most of the people that are talking to me have known me for many, 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 many years, some of them decades.
Yep.
And they still ask, what'd you think of the game? And I've had to tell them every single time, I don't watch it. It's
Yeah.
like, and they always look at me like I just grew a second head. And I'm like, guys, I'm not a sports guy. I never have been. Like, I'm glad for everybody that's happy about whatever happened in the game, but I don't fucking know. Like, I got literally no dog in this fight. Like, I got nothing. So if you ask me, like, hey, what did you think of so and so? I don't even know who that is. Like,
Yep.
like it's just, it would be like me being asking you, like, so what was your favorite time that Spider-Man faced off against Thanos? Like,
And you're like, wait, has that ever happened? I don't even know.
it has a couple times actually.
Yeah,
but
I know.
but yeah, it's what, yeah, I know, but it's like one of those things, like, where talking to the average person who knows those characters, because of the Avengers movies and Spider-Man, obviously everyone knows who Spider-Man is. But it's like, if I ask you a question like that, are you gonna know? No. Like, the average person, no, they're not going to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. The average person, like in a workplace, like you work in a hospital, there's lots of different types of people who work there. It's not like you
right.
work in a record store where, okay, you can kind of assume that most people in the building are probably going to be up for like a debate about some underground band, like like were the Sex Pistols really a punk band? Like let's argue about
Were
it.
they a boy band?
Exactly. And that's a conversation that you can have, or or assume that people understand something more obscure in the fandom because you're in that space. But when you're in a more, publicly available workspace, or a social situation, and people just assume, like, hey, what'd you think of the game
Hmm.
last night? And it's like the first question I ask myself is, what game? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Is it what season? Is it football season or baseball? I don't even know what sports like games are happening right now. Like, when does baseball start? I don't know. you know
That's when you just look at them and yell, yay, sports ball. And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but to your point, if you flipped it around and you were just like, oh man, like, what'd you think of that like twist ending in the new issue of Absolute Batman? And it's like,
You're right.
what? What's that? Like the average dude, who wears a polo and khakis to work at like the car dealership. You're just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Exactly.
Um, so it's kind of weird when you get put in these situations where like I kind of alluded to before, you have to make a decision in every single one of those situations when somebody makes an assumption that you know something, because what they're assuming is, well, of course everybody like knows about this or everybody agrees with me. Like, well, obviously, like this is what we do, and
Hmm.
then the decision you have to ask yourself, very quickly in your head in a split second is, do I want to be honest and tell them like I don't watch it, I don't care, or do you just want to like kind of be polite and be like, yeah, yeah, it was cool, or like, ah, shit, I missed it, which is kind of that safe
Yeah.
answer that doesn't really give anything away, like, oh, I missed it,
Yeah.
you
Like,
know.
oh yeah, no, I was here. I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, or like, do you or is it some kind of situation where you're trying to maybe impress somebody? Maybe it's like an in-law or a new boss or whatever. And it's like, do you want to risk kind of like lying a little bit, like, oh man, like fucking bills, and like, and kind of seeing if you can engage and hope that they don't ask you a more like detailed question and you'll get stuck, and it's like, oh, like, how do I answer this?
I hate those fucking situations.
Oh God, it happened to me recently. I was at a I was at a motorsports dealership slash store that sells like motorcycles and jet skis and stuff like that. And I was just buying a part, and I had to ask somebody where the parts department was. It was a really big building, and I went to the service department where they fix things, thinking, well, if the parts aren't back here, they'll at least be able to tell me where they are. And the first thing the guy asked me, well, the guy offered to show me where the parts department was, and I think he was just making idle conversation. But then he asked me like, oh, so what do you ride? You know, and then I'm in the store surrounded by people who are into motorcycles. There's literally 20 guys riding bikes around in the parking lot, either on like test drives or like, they're here with their bike club, buying parts or whatever. And I'm just like, like, I'm gonna look really emasculated if I'm like, oh, I don't drive, I'm just buying this for my wife, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, and I shouldn't care, but there was that split second where I'm like, oh, I look so much less like a man because I'm just here buying something, for my
Right.
girl who's cooler and tougher and better than me, so and it was like, so I had that like split second debate with myself before I was like, yeah, I don't ride, and
Yep.
I tried to let it go, and he was like, oh, you don't ride? Like, have you ever, like, did you ever used to have anything? Do you know how to ride? And then it was almost like he was confused, like, what do you mean you don't ride motorcycles? Do you know where you are?
Right.
And then he asked me all these follow-up questions, and I was like, oh, like, do I want to get into this with him, or do I just want to get to the end of this, 15-second conversation, because there's the parts department right there. Okay, bye.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. I've been in that exact situation so many fucking times where it's like you just want to get to what you're doing and someone's asking you about something that you don't care about. It's like,
Oh God, yeah.
I can't. Like, this happens to me at every single Comic Con that I've ever done. I will inevitably get questions about anime.
Oh yeah, I'm
Now,
sure.
I know we haven't really even queued up what this episode is about, so I won't hit the ground running, but I will say that's one of those things that happens to me all the time where people ask me questions about anime. And it's not that I haven't seen anime. I have some anime that I've enjoyed, but I'm not an anime guy. Like, not even a little. And
Yeah, same
I
here.
will get, and every time someone wants to talk to me about an anime at a con, when they find out, like when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not really into it. Oh my God, well you should watch. And then it's the laundry list of stuff that I should watch, and it's like, oh boy, okay. Like, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. No, you mentioned like keying up the topic, and I think that that's a good segue into what we're talking about, because what I wanted to bring up here was those sorts of strange social experiences that you have when people just assume that you agree with them, or assume that you know about something, but
Right.
especially even more so when you are in a subculture. I kind of mentioned
Yes.
the record store as like this extreme example, but well, again, it's kind of like a niche environment. But what if we just broaden that out to just pop culture in general? So if you're a person
Right.
who's into comics or horror or anime or whatever your kind of I hate calling them like nerd pastimes because I think the word nerd is overused to the point where it almost doesn't mean anything anymore. It's almost a slur, but
Right. Agreed.
but I'll use it in this context. The idea that like these sort of, if you're a nerd or you're a geek and you're into, Dungeons and Dragons and the Renaissance Fair or, whatever fantasy novels and sci-fi, then I think that there is a sort of assumption amongst other pop culture fans that, well, of course you like this thing, like, of course,
Right.
and just a couple of sort of high level examples where it's like, well, everybody likes, The Thing, right? The sci-fi movie,
Yeah.
right? Or like everybody, likes, Spider-Man or whatever. It's like
Right.
they just sort of assume that you do. But what if you don't?
Right.
And anime is a really good example because anime is so popular and it's basically just, Japanese animation. Like it's not even a genre, it's lots of stuff, but
Right.
it's probably safe for people in pop culture to assume that you know about anime. But what happens when you're in that situation where you just want to be like, nah, dude, I don't give a shit, you know?
Right. Well, and it's like for me in particular with the anime topic, it's like I get it. I'm at a Comic-Con. We're surrounded by anime. There's booths all over the place that got all sorts of anime characters. There's like I'm in Artist Alley. A lot of the tables have like anime drawings. My table does not. I because that's not my cup of tea. So I understand why someone would want to talk to me about it, but it's like there is always that feeling where it's like I don't want to be rude. I'm just like, hey, it's not my cup of tea. But then when they continue on and on and on and on, it's like, I got nothing I can add to this conversation. Like, all I'm saying is like, cool, man. Like, you're very passionate about that. That sounds awesome. But it's like, what do you say to that? Like,
Yeah.
like when they're done ranting at you for a while, it's like, what do you come back with? You've convinced me now to take on this giant catalog of anime. No, like I'm
No.
sorry. That's great that you have that fandom, and I'm happy for you, and I'm glad that you enjoy it. But it's not for me.
Exactly right. So the actual, specific topic we're going to talk about today in this rental rant episode, our 19th rental rant, almost to 20 of these things. Of course, one of our rental rants was also a Super Gushers, but it's neither here nor there. But the specific idea here is hot takes, right? What is a hot take that you have? And I'll start if you want, but like what's a hot take you have where you're like, okay, there's this pop culture thing that everybody in pop culture seems to love. Everybody at the conventions, they just revere this one thing. It's assumed that, of course, that everybody likes it or agrees with it or thinks it's that's the right take. But I don't give a fuck about that thing. But like you're almost afraid to admit it in like casual circles because people just immediately like jump on you about it, or they would if you admitted it. So, like what's an example of like what's a hot take where you're like, I don't give a shit about X, popular thing.
Well, I think one thing that like it's hard because I don't care about it, but at the same time, I will admit that there are cool things about it. And that's Power Rangers.
Okay.
I was a little too older for it. I was a little too old for it when it came out. But I do love old Godzilla movies. I love the giant kaiju battles. I've always enjoyed that. I used to watch the old Toho movies all the time. So the idea of a giant mech fighting a guy in a giant costume is pretty fun. I'm not going to lie. The first time I saw the fucking Megazord go up against Pudgy Pig, I'm like, all right, that's kind of fun. Like
Sure. Okay.
it's dumb, but I'm not a fan. Like it's not something that I've collected. It's not something I've seen all the shows of. I have a handful of action figures from Hasbro that from the Power Ranger stuff. Mostly it started off as getting gifts. And then there was a couple where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, okay, that's kind of a cool figure. I'm gonna buy that just because again, I'm a toy collector. But yeah, overall, I know very little about it. The most of what I know about the Power Rangers was when my two cousins were super into it, and they would visit, and I would watch it with them. And it was like, so I got to kind of know some of the stuff because I was like, all right, I'm watching it with young people. This is allowed. I'm allowed to watch this now because I was, like I said, I was a little too old for it. But I never really got heavily into it. Like I couldn't tell you all the different, variations of the Zords. I couldn't tell you all the different Power Rangers. I know like the first group. And even that, I don't know all their names,
Yeah,
like
yeah. I don't even know that much. You know.
it's very casually observed. But again, people in people in our generation, usually people that are about a couple years younger. There's a handful of people that are around your and my age, but for the most part, it's the people that I'm friends with that are like 3 or 4 years younger than me. That seems to be the generation that really glommed onto Power Rangers. Um, and I get it, but it's just not my cup of tea. But it is very heavily into the fandoms that I'm a part of. Like I mentioned toy collecting, obviously Comic Cons, sci-fi. Like there's a very heavy pull for Power Rangers in those communities.
Oh, I can definitely see that. Yeah, for me, the Power Rangers, first got on my radar. I guess, I saw it on TV and at some point in the '90s. But I agree, I was probably maybe just a little bit too old for the target audience. I also have friends that are exact age, like mid 40s guys, born in, like the early '80s or maybe even late '70s, but they're still really into it, and like they
Mm-hmm.
were just, it was totally, a cool thing for them. Just another cool '90s show. Like for me also, I'll mention like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, another cool '90s show that everybody
Mm-hmm.
loves. I personally don't give a fuck about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I like the original
Mm-hmm.
movie with Christy Swanson. I think that movie's great, but the TV show, like I don't think it's a bad show. I don't care if other people like it. I'm not, I don't have anything negative to say. I think it's great. I think I'm sure the show has many redeeming qualities, but I don't give a shit. I just don't.
Right.
I was never a fan. Same thing with the Power Rangers. And there was a little bit of me that was like, oh, this is just like Voltron all over again. But
Right.
Voltron itself was probably a ripoff of something else I don't know about. But 16-year-old me was just like, look, there's like a black one and a yellow one and a red one. It's just fucking Voltron. Like they don't have any original ideas anymore, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So my first example is probably a little bit of a broader category, and this is kind of what I was thinking of when I thought, man, this might get me in trouble a little bit. Like this might be like a nerd card revoked thing, but
Yeah.
like so I'll just say, the hot take here is, I don't get cosplay. Like
Okay.
I don't understand it. But in the sense of not that I don't, I can't fathom it or like rationalize it. I don't see the appeal at all, and I feel like already the pitchforks are being hoisted and the torches are being lit for how many people out there are just like, well, what do you mean? Because but like I don't fucking get it, man. I don't know why people do that. Dress up as pop culture characters and like go to conventions and stuff. Like I just genuinely cannot understand the appeal of it whatsoever. Even though I have friends who cosplay and I know how
Mhm.
much work and creativity goes into the costumes, but every time I see a cosplayer, like yesterday when there was cosplayers at my local comic book shop, and I was like, I couldn't help but cringe a little bit and try to get away from them.
See now I'm kind of in. I have a foot in both camps here because like I love cosplay. Like I love seeing cosplay. That's one of my favorite things about doing cons is seeing like the creative costumes that people come up with. And I'm always asking, like when people come to my table, like, hey, can I take a picture? Because I always think it's really neat, like the amount of work that people put into that. But on the other hand, I fucking hate getting dressed up in costume. You'd think, me being a huge horror nut, loving Halloween and all that, I'd love to dress up. I hate dressing up. I've always hated dressing up.
Same.
I'm not comfortable. Like it's like I don't want to be in a costume where I'm uncomfortable. And in my opinion, most really good costumes you're going to be uncomfortable. It's like
Yeah.
you have to fabricate something or have some kind of makeup or prosthetic or something that's just not comfortable. Like, does it look cool? Abso-fucking-lutely. That's awesome looking. But do I want to wear it for 8 hours? No, I fucking do not. It's like, so I definitely understand the fuck, I don't want to dress up, but I also get the, wow, that's really cool. And I kind of get the appeal of it. And I think the key factor here is kids who did imagination play in the sense of like dressing up and role playing
Hmm.
versus kids who were more of the director. Like I feel like you and I were that type of kid that were the director, where we would get our toys and we'd create a story.
Sure. Yep.
So we'd be like playing through like using these little avatars that we were directing what was happening, like we were creating this story rather than dressing ourselves up in the role and acting out the story. And I think a lot of people who had that type of imagination play, who liked to play dress up, who liked to play with like role play items, like they were the kids that had like the toy swords and the toy guns, and like I had toy guns and stuff too, but I had more action figures than I had role play items.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a big key factor there, because most of the people that I know that like cosplay were those types of kids that like to play dress up.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like how I recapture my childhood by collecting action figures and posing them on my desk. And I have a fucking desk literally full of toys right now. Um, and it's just something I fiddle with. Like I'll be, recording a podcast like this, playing with an action figure, reading something, playing with an action figure, watching a movie, playing with it. It's like a comfort thing, almost like a tick. Whereas I feel like a lot of people who played dress up as kids, they reconnect with their childhood through cosplay. I
Yeah.
think that's what the draw is for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it makes sense, and I'm glad we're having a little bit of a debate about it here because it's like
Mm.
I'm gonna get like kicked out of the club if I
No,
keep.
no, but I
No.
totally agree in the sense of like I don't get it. Like I don't get the drive. Like for me personally, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it though, talking about like people who, do like role play versus director. And I was waiting for you to say actor, right? It's like
Uh,
the actor or the performer versus, like the director, in the
yep.
sense of like, like think about making a movie. I would much rather be the director or the screenwriter
Oh
or,
hell yeah.
or even
Put me behind the fucking scenes.
yeah, exactly. But the idea of getting up in front of people and like performing and putting on a show is like, oh God, like no, that's absolutely not for me. And like I'm not scared. Like I don't have stage fright. Like I get up and I'll give speeches. Like I've given speeches to, literally hundreds of people in a room at a convention. I have zero fear about public speaking. In fact, I enjoy it. That's something that
Mhm.
I do look forward to. But that's me. That's not me playing a character. Something about like
Yeah.
playing pretend and pretending to not like come up with a pretend character, but to be a pretend character and like put on a little show is
Yeah.
oh is it's so unappealing to me. Again, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not embarrassed by it, but it's just to me it would be like, hey, like let's go, play like tackle football. And I'm like, fuck no, I am not playing fucking tackle football. That sounds awful. Like I am not
Right.
doing that. And I think there's a little bit of I'll say secondhand embarrassment, even though I don't know that embarrassment
Hmm.
is the right word. But like when I see the cosplayers, again, like when I saw them yesterday, I was kind of joking about like cringing and running away. But it's like I see a cosplayer, and then it's like, please don't come over here and interact with me.
Yeah.
Please, like I don't want to interact with you because then I'm gonna feel
Well,
like like now I have to put on a little bit of a show when really I don't like. There's little kids over there. Go take a picture with them. Like that's what they're here for because it's free comic book day. But
right.
and so every time I see cosplayers, I kind of like go on alert, like, oh, I don't want to interact with this. Like I appreciate your fandom, like all power to you. I'm not trying to, denigrate that in any way. I got nothing against it. I have so much respect for like we have friends who are scare actors and performers and makeup artists, and I think that stuff is all amazing. Full support to absolutely everybody, but I would never do it. you know?
Oh, 100%. And I'm the type of person, I do have fear about it. Like I am not a public speaker. It's one of those things I fucking hate doing. I hate getting up in front of a crowd and giving a speech. Um, and I don't like eyes on me. Like that's the other thing is I'm like I remember this going years ago. We did me and Tara did Para Horror, which is a convention around here I miss, but there was a horror trivia contest and I knew I could hold my own. but I was terrified to get up on stage. And Tara was constantly prodding me like, do it, fucking do it. Come on, go up there. And yeah, I was in tie for first place. But it was one
Nice.
of those things where it's like I was able to rattle off the answers, no problem. But I was the whole time I was nervous as fuck. And there was like only 6 people watching. Like half the convention wasn't even watching. But I was still just like, I got a microphone and I'm on the stage. I don't like it. So I'm that type of guy. I don't want eyes on me. So cosplay to me is horrifying for that factor. Like I don't want everyone looking at me. I want people looking at what I create. Fuck yeah. Like, give me an art show. Let me hang a bunch of my artwork on the wall and then stand back and watch as people observe it. Fuck yes. That is my element. I love it. Same thing with the convention. I like sitting behind the table. I don't mind talking about my work. If someone's like, hey, what did you use to create this? Or blah, blah, blah. Or did you ever draw this? Cool. I'll talk all day long. But if it's like, now get up and draw something in front of all of us, I'm like, God, eyes are on me. And I hate that, which is why I love doing drawing videos and podcasts, because I'm by myself doing that. Then I can stand back and watch the eyes on it. And I can handle the fear of eyes being on me if I've already done the thing and then people are watching it. I don't get that embarrassment. But in the moment, oh fuck yeah, this is why I could never cosplay. I just couldn't do it. But as far as that whole like don't come over here thing, I will. Now this is where I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. There is a cringe factor, and I feel like even cosplayers would agree with me on this. There is a cringe factor to certain cosplayers. There are people who take it way too fucking far. There are people who play the character to an obnoxious point, and they want to force you to interact with them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go on record and say, if you dress up as Deadpool, chances are I don't want to talk to you. Now, that's going to get me some hate, I know. But I have yet to meet a Deadpool cosplayer that has not made my convention experience worse. Because usually they're the ones who come up to your table, knock shit off the table, do little pranks and shit in front of your table, blocking customers. Like, hey, everybody, look at me. I'm Deadpool and I'm dancing. I'm a silly man. That irks the crap out of me.
Yes.
And I've seen it so many fucking times. Now, that's not to say that there aren't great Deadpool costumes. There are gorgeous Deadpool costumes out there that I'm sure these people put tons and tons and tons of effort into making. But then when you act like an obnoxious prick because that's the character, it's like it doesn't give you a license to be a douchebag. Just because the character's a douchebag, don't be a douchebag to people.
Oh, no, I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't even think about that. But yeah, and again, this happened yesterday with the cosplayers that I saw, and the costumes were great. There was a Mandalorian, there was a Catwoman from the Absolute Batman comic, that version of it. Like there was a lot of great costumes, and there was this one. I don't want to point out who it was, but there was this one cosplayer who, inside the comic book store, and it's free comic book day, there's lots of people there. There was, a little kid standing in line, like 2 people in front of me. The kid must have been 7 or 8 years old with his parents. And this cosplayer came over who had this kind of a horror movie character, but in like a cutesy way, right? It was, again, I don't want to say what it was, but it was like, you could tell that she was trying to be like, oh, hey, kitties, like, hoo-hoo, look at me, I'm so kooky and gothy and creepy, like, look at me. And she goes up to this kid and she's kind of like pretend bonking him on the head with this like weapon that she had. And I think that she was waiting for the kid to be like, oh, that's so cool, like, check it out, mom. But instead the kid was so embarrassed because suddenly the kid was the center of attention. The other kids were looking at him and she was like, oh, like, what's wrong with you? Like, like, hee like, bonk, bonk, bonk. Like, and it was like she was trying to get a reaction out of him, but you could tell the kid was mortified because like, why is this weird lady talking to me? And it was like, you know what, like take a fucking hint, chick, like back off.
Yeah.
Like the kid doesn't want you there. Like stop forcing it on him and then doubling down and making it worse by like continuing because you don't get the reaction that you want,
Well, it's when you treat other people as props in your play.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's really fucking frustrating because, like, I get it. You're putting on a show and there are tons of people that appreciate it. Of course there are. But there are people that don't want to be involved, and it's like when they don't want to be involved, change gears, It's like go do that to somebody else. Don't keep focusing on that person.
Right? Like, let it go, man. I remember when I was in high school, we had like, I don't even remember what the details of it were. It was some kind of an assembly. Everybody went into the auditorium. We're all sitting in seats over the stage, and they had a rock band play. I don't even remember why. The only part I remember is being embarrassed. That's what's stuck in my head. But it was this rock band with this woman singer, and they were just playing like cover songs, and they covered. I don't remember who the artist is. That song Black Velvet from like the early 90s, like Black Velvet and like a little boy's smile or however that song goes,
Yeah.
And they were singing that song, and I hate that fucking song, and I haven't thought about it in a long time. And I especially hated it then. But this lady comes off the stage, and it's a dark room. It's a rock band. Of course, they turn the lights off, and there's a spotlight on her, and she starts walking up the aisle in the middle of the auditorium between the seats, and she's kind of like singing at kids, and like the spotlight is following her, and every kid is just kind of like, like no, like not me, not me, not me, and all the other,
Yep.
kids around him are kind of like laughing and like, oh, she got you, bro. And then for some reason, when she got to me, I wasn't like shying away or anything, but I happened to be sitting on the aisle seat, and I was just looking at her, and she stops like walking like the other kids. She just kind of walked past them with the spotlight, but she stops in front of me and she starts singing like right in my face, like Black Velvet. And and every kid around me just starts laughing hysterically, like, oh shit, she's getting Josh, and the whole fucking room is laughing at me. I'm literally in a spotlight being laughed at by my entire high school, and I was so embarrassed and so fucking pissed off. Like, I was embarrassed for in the moment, and then just livid with rage, like boiling with rage. I wanted to smack this adult woman in the goddamn throat for like, how dare you come to my high school? I'm already a nerdy kid and you're embarrassing me in front of my entire high school. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, don't you know anything about teenagers? Like, get the fuck away from me. Oh, I was mortified and so mad.
Dude, 100%. Like, fuck that. Want anything to do with that?
God damn it! It was, and it was like she could tell, like, oh, this kid looks bored. I'm gonna stop and like cheer him up with my like, dulcet, voice. And I'm just like, God damn it, bitch! You are ruining my day. Like, I hate you right now. Like, I'm never gonna live this down. Oh God! But she didn't care. She was just putting on a show. Anyway,
right?
I'm just like ranting now.
And I think though that is a personality type. There is that personality type that again wants to perform, and the whole world is their stage. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you're on that stage with them, you're part of their performance, and it's like some people are very aware of it, thankfully. And then there's other people that choose to dress as Deadpool. So.
Well, there you go. Oh man! All right, so you picked a property with Power Rangers. I kind of went a little bit broader with like a concept of like cosplay. We kind of went on, but what about you? Do you have like another example? I have some more, but let's toss it back and forth.
I do have other properties, and that's a hard thing for me because, like, I mean, other than certain properties, the only fandom that I really don't get is sports, just because for me, like I said, the only sport I like fat guy sports. I like bowling, billiards, and darts. Like,
there you go.
I like to play that shit. But yeah, as far as like watching sports, like, it's just not my cup of tea. But as far as like properties that are beloved in almost every fandom that I'm a part of, I'll give you one. It's definitely a hot take, and I feel like I'm gonna get some hate over this one. But I've never liked it, and that's Thundercats.
Oh, really? Okay.
I have never been a Thundercats fan. I didn't get it as a kid. The LJN toys, they were way too big to like play with the other toys I had, so I didn't want any of them. I did end up getting Mumra and Marmot, his dog, but like I just used them as monsters because they were, I didn't care about the show. When the reboot happened, the more anime centered reboot, I want to say it was 2011 or maybe before that. I don't remember what era it was, but it's a Cartoon Network reboot. I will give them this. That show was really good. It was a very well thought out action sci-fi show. And the show was very good. Like, I actually did watch that. But as far as classic Thundercats, I have no care. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a really fucking absurd property to be honest with you. Like, you have these cat people who come to this other planet. Now their leader is a baby. He's, a 12-year-old kid who they age up in like cryostasis somehow. And then
Mm-hmm.
so Lion-O is actually only like a 12-year-old, and Snarf was his like nursemaid, which is why Snarf is there. But Lion-O has to be the leader. So even though he's a baby, he's in a grown man's body. So he's the leader. Why did all the Thundercats show up to New Earth naked? Like, literally, watch the first episode. They're all fucking naked, which is like, wow, that's weird. And then fuck, let's break it down. Mumra, how is he the fucking bad guy? Like, Mumra is like, he was the guy, like he lived on that planet. He's native to Earth too.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes some fucking invaders who set up a whole base on their planet, and then they're just like, hey, we gonna run this shit. And he's like, no, you're not. Like, fuck you. And he uses like old world magics. Like, he's like a shaman trying to stop these like technological fucking warlords who are just taking over their fucking planet and killing all the denizens. Fuck Thundercats.
Uncle Tom.
Exactly. Fucking Thundercats.
Oh god, no, that's funny. I never really thought about that. Yeah, the fact that like Mumra was like he was the native. It was like, man,
Yeah,
them some fucking colonizers. Shit.
exactly. The Thundercats are literally intergalactic colonizers, led by a boy king. That is ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really funny take. Like, I gotta say, I was definitely a fan of Thundercats as a kid. I really liked it. I had some of the toys. I told a story about how when I moved away from Texas when I was 5, and I had to like leave my Lino toy behind, and it like broke my heart. I told that story in one of our other episodes, and I definitely used to like it. But I remember when it came back. I want to say it was like what 2000 2001, and as a comic book through
Yep.
shit, was it, I forget who was publishing that, Dynamite maybe, I forget, but whatever, it came, and it was such a big deal. There was like so many like famous artists doing alternate covers. It was this huge thing. The Thundercats really led a resurgence of licensed properties in comics. Like, there was a GI Joe reboot, and they fucking did like the Silverhawks and Transformers, and even fucking Space Ghost, and
Wasn't that Dreamwave?
Dreamwave. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was even Battle of the Planets came back, and it was
yeah.
But I remember just being so kind of bitter, because I was like, first of all, that Thundercats comic is terrible, and then it led to this whole launch of all these other terrible comics, and I was just like, why do people like this shit? It's fucking terrible. Like, I don't get it, man. And I probably told this joke once before too, but when I was a kid, my mom used to hate it because she you casually watch the cartoons that your kids are into, even though she didn't really watch it, but so she knew who Mumra was, and they called him Mumra, the spirit of evil, and I just thought it was the funniest thing in the world when I was a kid. Like, my humor, I was so clever. I was like, mom, mum, mummy, and so I would refer to my mom as Mumra, the spirit of evil, and I swear she wanted to smack me every time I did
it. That's awesome.
Oh man. Well, yeah, on that same token, like, I won't get into like, specific detail, but like, I could rattle shitloads of them off like that. Like, I don't give a fuck about Batman. I've seen a lot of great Batman movies. A lot of great stories about Batman have been made as comics and movies, but as a character, I don't give a fuck. Same about Spider-Man, I don't give a fuck. Wolverine, Superman, I don't give a fuck about any of them. Like, all those popular characters, like when I got into superhero comics when I was like 11, and everybody was just like all over like the Punisher and Lobo and Ghost Rider and Wolverine, and I didn't give a fuck about any of them. I was just like, nah, dude, I'm gonna go, read all these like D-list characters like Guardians of the Galaxy, who at the time were D-list characters, and it's like, I never understood why people freak out about these characters, and it's not even so much the stories. Again, I love Spider-Man movies. I love Wolverine as the character in like the X-Men movies. And Hugh Jackman's performance. Like, I love the portrayals and some of the stories, but the type of people who just they buy every Spider-Man comic just because he's in it, or every Wolverine comic just because he's in it. I'm just like, I don't fucking get it, dude. Like, who gives a shit about the dude's got claws? Like, you know how many characters have claws? Like, what the fuck's interesting about Wolverine? I don't care.
See where, and it's funny because like I, to a degree, would agree with you on some of this stuff. Like, I mean, Spider-Man, my all-time favorite superhero, so I can't follow you there. And the same thing with Batman. I fucking love Batman comics, even though I think Bruce Wayne as a character is kind of fucked up. But I still love Batman comics. Now Superman is one of those characters I agree with you on. I fucking hate Superman, but I love the concept of Superman. Like, I always want to be told a good Superman story because I think that a pure superhero like that, like somebody who is like always trying to do the right thing, even in the face of impossibility. Like, I like the concept. I think that leads to boring storytelling, unfortunately. That being said, there have been some truly great Superman stories.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about Superman Peace on Earth, the Alex Ross one, which
Love it.
the reason I love that one so much is because Superman fails. It's he tries to, bring peace to mankind. We're always fighting. We're always killing each other. He's like, I'm going to end world hunger. Like, fuck Lex Luthor and Brainiac. I'm going to go tackle real problems that affect real people. I'm going to get rid of nuclear weapons. I'm going to bring food to areas that are like food deserts, and I'm going to make sure people have food. And then their governments wouldn't allow the people to have food, and the people are still fighting. And Superman realizes he can't save mankind from themselves. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like he fails not because he's not perfect, he fails because mankind is flawed. And I like that's a beautiful story to tell with that type of a character.
Yeah.
But most of those stories are just Superman can do whatever the fuck he wants. Punch the bad guy. Yay. And it's like, fuck that. I don't care. It's
Yeah.
stupid.
Exactly. Like, I can buy every, Superman comic that comes out just because Superman's in it. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what it comes down to for me. I think it has more to do with that. I mean, yes, I do think Wolverine is a badass character. He has a great design. I do love the claw. I was like, I was kind of
Yeah.
exaggerating before.
There is a love of that character that just kind of defies rationale. So I do
Exactly.
understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think the character is badass and you can tell some badass stories with him, but I don't understand the type of fan who is just like they decide that this character is their favorite character, whoever it is, and then they just buy anything no matter what. Like if it has the Superman
Yeah.
S on it, they're buying it. If it has like the Batman, like the yellow like chest symbol, boom, they're gonna buy it. Like it doesn't matter what it is, they're gonna buy it because it's their character that they like. And I'm like, dude, I don't fucking get that at all. Like at all, like
Yeah.
I there are characters that I love. I love Nova the Human Rocket. I love Speedball. I love the fucking Rocketeer. But I've read some terrible fucking Rocketeer comics and I did not keep them. I read it and said, nope, never mind. I'm gonna sell that. And it's like because
Yep.
they're not all good. Like period. Like they're just not. And all I really care
Yep.
about is stuff that I enjoy, whether I think it's a good story or sometimes you just think a thing is a neat object. Like I've got stuff I own just because I think it's a neat thing, but
Yeah.
I don't need to own everything, just
Right.
it's like I'm kind of boiling it all down. I'm distilling it all down to this idea of people who, they just decide that this is the thing that they like, and then now they're just going to buy everything, whether it's good or bad. And I'm like, that's dumb. That's dumb.
Yes. Completely fucking agree on that.
Right. And again, like let's distill it down even more into a nice thick gravy of a topic that's like saying, well, what I'm really talking about is like I'm a collector, but I think the other collectors who collect just to collect, that's fucking dumb. And out come the pitchforks.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think you stumbled onto something because this is something that I talk about all the time on Count Creepyhead, where it's like I cherry pick. I am a cherry pick collector where like if I'm buying like okay, let's say I'm buying GI Joes. Do I have to have every single GI Joe? No. But if it's a character that I liked as a kid, I might want to grab it. But I have to see it first. So it's like Super 7 is currently doing like the O-Ring Joe revival, but they're mostly focusing on versions from cartoons, comic books, stuff that we didn't get from Hasbro back in the 80s, but it's done as if we were getting them back in the 80s. So like a lot of the characters I've passed up on. But there were characters like they did. Her name was Mara. She was one of the first Cobra eels, and they had a whole cartoon episode
Hmm.
about her where it's like you see the process that the eels go through. And we never got a Mara figure. Well, they released Mara with like her diving suit apparatus, and I'm like, oh shit, that's cool. I liked that cartoon as a kid. I'm gonna grab her. Did I need all the other figures that came out in that wave? No, not at all. I just grabbed that one character.
Yeah.
So collecting like that where you're just like, ooh, I want this one thing. Like again, I'm a Ninja Turtle collector. I know you got something to say about Ninja Turtles, but I'm a Ninja Turtle collector. And usually if I can just buy one. If I buy Donatello, I'm good because he's my favorite. If I
Hmm.
just Donatello, I don't need to buy the other three. I'm okay. But if I get any of the other three, I then got to get the rest. That is a sick compulsion that I do have, where it's
Yeah.
like they released they were kind of more comic inspired, like the old Eastman and Laird original designs. They released Playmates figures of those designs. I bought Donatello at that 80s toy shop. It's a little toy shop in Tonawanda. I grabbed him. I was happy. I'm like, I got Donatello. I don't need the other three. Well, then a friend of mine gave me Leonardo as a gift. And I'm like, fuck, I got to get Michelangelo and Raphael before they go out.
Right. Yeah. And I get that for sure. I get the idea of like you want to put the set together. I get that. Like
Yeah.
and I think that that's a different thing. I think that that's a different thing for sure. Like if you're a person that collects like Superman comics, if they put out like a 4-issue miniseries, well, you wouldn't just buy the first 2 issues. Like there's only 4 of them. You might as well just get the whole set. Like it makes sense.
Right, exactly.
Just as a collector, but just to put the set together, And I've done that where I've decided, hey, I'm going to buy every comic in this particular line of comics just because I think it's a cool line. I feel like we bring Rob Liefeld up on the show all the fucking time, but
Yep.
there was a time a couple years ago when I realized that I had some trade paperbacks, like paperback square bound reprints of Rob Liefeld Extreme comics from the 90s, but there weren't actually a lot of trade paperbacks produced by Rob Liefeld's independent companies in the 90s, whether that be Extreme or Awesome or Arcade or Maximum. Uh, Notice the pattern in the names, right? Extreme, Maximum,
Hmm.
Awesome. But
Very 90s.
yeah, exactly. But I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I had the New Men trade, and I had that one Youngblood hardcover that was really rare. And I was like, oh, that would be a neat thing to buy. Like, what if I just got all of these? And I did. I even ended up interacting with Rob Liefeld on social media at one point because I posted a picture and he was like, oh, well, I have this one. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that the Prophet trade paperback was ever even published. Like, I thought it was solicited and then canceled. They exist in the real world. I have to find one. And I thought it was cool. So I put my set together. I had all of them. 20 something of them. And then after I had them all, I was like, I felt good that I put the set together. And then I sold all the
Yeah.
ones that I didn't actually enjoy reading because I do this for fun and it needs to be good. Where I was like, cool, I accomplished the thing I wanted to accomplish, got the dopamine rush. But I was like, I don't need some of these comics in my collection because I don't actually enjoy them. But but it was different where or like I used to buy every Wildstorm comic, but the difference is like, yeah, but I don't have any compulsion to buy the bootleg Gen 13 movie DVD or like the skateboards and the t-shirts and the pins and the
Right.
buttons and the hats and whatever. I don't need to own everything just because Jim Lee looked at it once. Like I don't I,
Right.
I don't need to know all of that stuff. Like I'm happy with the set that I put together as a collector, but I think that kind of like the limitation makes sense. But when you're the type of collector who's just like, oh, I saw Batman, so I had to spend money on it. I'm like, did you really? you know?
Right. Well, that's like okay. Like everyone that listens to any of our podcasts on the the fucking Red Pantheon Network knows that my favorite movie is Return of the Living Dead. I fucking love Return of the Living Dead. Always will. I have all 5 Return of the Living Dead movies on DVD. Will I go back and watch 4 and 5? Probably no. Probably never. But I have them in my collection because I'm a huge Return of the Living Dead fan. Now, Return of the Living Dead merchandise, I have some of the action figures from Super 7. Pretty much any Tarman action figure that has come out, I've gotten. But again, there's very few. There's like maybe 8, so it's like from different companies, and I have all of those. I have 2 of them on my desk right now. I have one from Super 7 and one from Trick or Treat Studios. But like, I won't go, like, okay, there's all these various like colorways of Tarman. I'm not going to try to get all those. Like, that's
Hmm.
ridiculous to me. Like, oh yeah, I have to have the blue glow in the dark and the green glow in the dark, and I have to have the one that's sparkly. And no, I don't care. I have a Tarman. I'm happy with
Yeah.
it. Like, I don't have to have the full collection. But the movies, yeah, I'm gonna want all of them.
Oh yeah, you
You
got to
know?
put the set together, right? It's like I don't
Exactly.
I don't get people who buy like variant covers for comics. They put out like six covers and you have people obsess over having to own all six covers. I'm like, it's the same
Yeah.
comic. Like just buy the cover if you think the cover is cool, but like why are you obsessively buying like six copies of every single issue of this comic series? You know they're going to put out a variant cover every single time. Like how do you really care that much? I mean, really? Or is it just like
Yeah.
is it just this unhealthy obsession? Like maybe you should talk to somebody, like
Well, and that's a legit thing though. Like that becomes like an addiction. Like, I remember as a teenager when Power of the Force, the Star Wars figures, when they got re-released in the early 90s, and they were like the super buff versions of Star Wars characters,
oh yeah,
because
yeah.
at at the time superhero and wrestler toys were all the rage. So they were trying to compete in that market. But I was so crazy about it. Like, I was such a huge Star Wars nut that when those came out, in my head, I'm like, well, the old figures were worth so much money. I got to keep these in the box, like thousands of other people did.
Yeah.
I bought a bunch of those first Star Wars figures, but I was also a kid and I wanted to open them and play with them. So I was like, fuck, what do I do? So I bought two of almost every fucking figure in that first wave. And it's like, why did I do that? Why did I feel that compulsion that I had to do that? It was and it got old quick. Like, I went through the first wave like that. I didn't make it to wave two doing that, because
Hmm.
it's like I'm spending all of this money just so I can have one to hang on my wall and one to open up and play with. And that's really dumb. It's like, at least in my head, it was really dumb,
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, not that I have definitely been guilty of being a speculator from time to time, like buying something just because I'm like, I know that this is going to end up being worth some money,
Yeah.
and as a collector who's been around a while, I think that I have wised up enough to kind of understand when I'm probably going to be right about this. And I've been burned,
Hmm.
sure, but I don't really like to do it that often, but every once in a while it's hard to resist the urge of like, like this obscure band that I was really into in the 90s, like they're putting out this like 30 years later limited edition vinyl and it's only on Kickstarter and I don't think everyone even knows about it. But the last time that something like this happened and I decided not to bother because I don't really listen to vinyl records that much, but even though I was following the Kickstarter and I decided at the last minute not to do it, but now those same fucking records are selling, like actively selling, not just listed for, but actively selling on eBay for like $200 each. I was like, fuck, I could have bought it for $40. So the next time it happened, I was like, well, I got $40. I was like,
Right.
so I might as well just buy it and see if I can like make a little bit of money. I mean, shit, I missed the train that first time. Like, why not? Now I got the inside track, but I
Hmm.
I don't typically think that speculating it's usually a loser's game. Like with stuff that becomes valuable is usually the stuff that you would never expect.
Yeah.
The reason it becomes valuable is because nobody thought it would be a big deal, so they didn't make that many of them and not a lot of people bought them. They were rare the day they came out and now they're still rare, but for some reason interest grew for whatever, maybe that's a movie adaptation or the creator got famous for something, whatever. Now everyone cares about that comic or that toy or that record or whatever that no one gave a fuck about when it first came out. That's what makes things valuable. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's usually just a crapshoot. Like trying to do it on purpose, like
Yeah.
yeah, it takes
Well,
too many resources.
a lot of times it's lack of knowledge, because it's like, a comic book or a toy line or a movie or something that kind of comes out and goes under the radar, because like it wasn't a big deal, so like the average person didn't hear about it. So like for example, The Walking Dead. When The Walking Dead first came out, zombie comics weren't all the rage yet. Like, that was the early 2000s, before zombie comics were really all that big. They were few and far between. So there was enough horror fans out there, like me and you, for example, that were just like, fuck yeah, this looks cool. It's Robert Kirkman, zombie comic. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. Well, then the show comes along And then everybody knows about Walking Dead, and now it's getting all of this popularity. But when it first came out, it was just, the horror comics weren't still that big yet. They hadn't really blown up again. They were just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
they were there, but it was still, we were in the superhero boom of the early 2000s. So it was like it just wasn't a well-known thing.
Yeah, there was no way you could have known, and that's that's the way that those things typically try to be. But yeah, speculating on something and you're like, oh, I'm gonna buy 2 copies of this or whatever, or I'm gonna buy all the variant covers and they're all gonna be worth money. And I'm like, nah, not really, dude. Like
Well,
probably
and,
not.
and that's the thing. Those are usually like, those are X-Men books or Spider-Man books or Superman. Those are well-known things. So
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to be worth shit, dude.
yeah,
People know about those characters.
right, exactly. Like shit, man. I wish I would have never quit collecting Savage Dragon monthly comics, like I did back in the 2010s, just because I was like, I'll switch to the trade paperbacks just for like budget reasons. I gotta save some
Hmm.
bucks, and I picked the worst possible time to do it because that was the period when the Savage Dragon comic was the least popular. It had the lowest print runs, and Eric Larson was basically just doing it because, well, he's like an image partner. He doesn't really need the money. He just wanted to make the
Hmm.
comic, and it was like barely paying the bills. And now that the comic has become more popular again, and those print runs were so low that it's like, fuck, every one of those issues is gonna be, $50 to $100 on eBay, like all day, which is why my collection is still incomplete because I don't fucking have money to go back and buy those back issues. And I'm like,
Right.
damn it, like I picked the worst time to quit. Shit, I could have had all those, but I wouldn't have sold them because I want them for my own collection. Um,
Exactly.
but sorry, I think to kind of circle back to the original premise here for a second, and if you don't mind changing the subject,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
well, actually, before we do it entirely, I will say because you teed it up a minute ago, yeah, the Turtles are another good example. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are another example of something. It's a property that like I don't know, I don't really care, but it's actually one of the properties that I'm almost embarrassed to admit. It's like that situation where I have like, do I want to pretend that I like football just to like not get into it with somebody?
Right.
Like, should I just pretend that I like the Turtles? And it's because the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are in this like rarefied kind of strange position where, because it started off as a underground, self-published, very low print, black and white indie comic in the 80s, it was like legit underground comics, and then later became this big hit as like a Saturday morning cartoon, a big mainstream hit. It's on both sides of that spectrum of being like, sort of like street cred, underground, cool, and super super popular mainstream. Everybody loves it, like high quality, movies and TV shows that are available.
Hmm.
And so, well, of course everybody loves it. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I thought the original Mirage comics were pretty cool. Like I don't think they're all that. Like
Hmm.
I know way better comics, from the same year. Was that 86, I think, right? I know way better underground comics that came out that year. And I know way better cartoons from the 90s. And I know way better live action movies. And it's like,
Hmm.
I don't get what the turtle love is all about. I mean, they're cool, but like, why do people freak out about it? But I'm almost embarrassed to admit it because then I feel like other people are kind of like, well, you're not a real fan because you don't get it. And I'm like, no, I get it. I just don't care.
Well, and I've joked about this a couple of times as being a diehard Turtle fan. Like, two of my childhood fandoms that just like pretty sure I'm always gonna love are Ninja Turtles and GI Joe. And again, you can't really redo GI Joe now, so that is definitely a time capsule because that was Reagan era, like
Yeah.
America. I don't think you can do. They've tried multiple times to rebrand and bring it back and do it. I think the only way you bring back GI Joe is in the sci-fi capacity. I know they're talking about doing a live action Transformers GI Joe crossover movie. I think you could do it that way where it's military sci-fi, but the GI Joe of the 80s, the real American hero, yeah, I don't think that's ever going to come back. It's kind of stuck in that time, whereas the Turtles are timeless in the sense of that it's literally just superhero ninjas. everybody loves superhero ninjas. It's
Right?
like
Exactly.
people love kung fu and people love superheroes. But no, for me, I've joked about the Turtles many times being like, this is one of those things that it's like a fever dream. How the fuck did this gain popularity? Like, let's look at it from like an adult lens in the 1980s. Here is a toy line and a cartoon line about four humanoid turtles that wear various color coded bandanas and a belt and knee pads and nothing else. Like they're pretty much naked.
Yep.
They all have various ninja weapons and they fight a ninja clan that is made up of cybernetic ninja soldiers funded by an alien brain from another dimension, and they use an ooze called mutagen to turn humanoids into weird monsters. And they fight, aliens and interdimensional beings and other mutants and ninjas. And what the fuck am I talking about? Like, that just sounds
Exactly.
so absurd and ludicrous. Oh, and did I forget that their favorite thing to do is eat pizza, but not just regular pizza with really weird shit on it?
Yeah,
It's like,
it's like, what?
and they all talk like surfers, like
just
stereotype.
just piling it on, making it worse.
It gets crazier and crazier. But then when you look at it from the comic standpoint, I know you obviously know all about this, and I'm sure most of our listeners do. But it's like it was the timeless thing about the Turtles is the fact that it is parody. It is a spoof. It is things that we do on this very show. Parody is always relevant, and at the time. Obviously Frank Miller's Daredevil, huge fucking seller in the fucking 80s. It's ninjas and superpowers and all that. So what do these two guys do? They're like, hey, let's do a send up of those comics. We have Daredevil, who was blinded by a radioactive isotope. Well, what if that isotope, fell in the sewers and mutated some turtles? Like, that's funny. Like, we're gonna have, super powered ninjas. And let's see, Daredevil was trained by Master Stick, so we're gonna have them trained by Master Splinter because it's Lil Stick. That's funny. And he fights the hand, and they're gonna fight the foot. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so it's total parody of Daredevil. And that's what they did. They leaned into the Daredevil parody, but it blew the fuck up. And they were like, "Oh shit, we killed off our main bad guy in issue 1. What do we do?" Well,
Right.
we have this alien idea with Fugitoid that didn't go anywhere. Let's bring that shit in. And then they smashed it together, and it was like fucking, chocolate and peanut butter. It was two great tastes to taste great together. Mutant turtles and fucking aliens. Sure, let's go. And it kind of just it was like lightning in a bottle. It was one of those things where it's got all the stuff. It was like all the stuff that an 80s kid wants. Ninjas, robots, aliens, monsters, murder, swearing. The Mirage comics were filled with all that stuff, you know. So then when they make a toy line about it, it's like, just drop the adult stuff and keep all the rest. It's still all the stuff that a kid wanted in the 80s. Monsters, ninjas, action, sci-fi, robots, space adventures. It's all there, you know. So I get why the Turtles was such a huge, huge thing. But I also understand why it's really not appealing to a lot of people, because it's just like, what the fuck is that?
Right? Yeah, it was so strange, and like it was always there was also a really strange trend right after it, where because it itself is a parody, but I really think it went over a lot of people's heads at the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And when it was translated into like the cartoon, I mean, you might even as a kid reading comics, at like 11 years old, I knew that. Hey, wait a second! Like the turtles fight ninjas called the foot, but like Daredevil fights
Yep.
ninjas called the hand. Oh, that's kind of funny. I didn't realize it was a parody. I just thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Like they're
Yeah,
taking
like a fun coincidence.
yeah, or maybe, oh, that's cool. They based it like, it's like an homage. Like you kind of,
Yeah.
lots of movies and, novels or whatever. Like you kind of steal stuff from other things as like a nod to it because it's kind of cool. And I'm like, even as a kid, I realized that. I didn't know it was actually a parody to begin with. But then there was this weird trend where there were parodies of the parody. There were other comics,
Yep.
and it was like people were trying to jump on the bandwagon by either doing their own just complete ripoff of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or doing a parody of it. And there was like some of the examples are, and I have to read this list: the naive interdimensional commando koalas, or
I
the
was always a fan of adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters.
Of course you were, and that's probably because that was one of the first comics that Sam Keith ever worked on. That I know you're a big fan of because he went on to create the Max.
Yes. Oh, I fucking love Sam Keith's work. Gone too soon.
Gone too soon. Gone too soon. But I'm glad that the preteen Dirty Jean Kung Fu Kangaroos are gone.
Yes. But like, so that was like the shit in the comic books. But then let's translate that to cartoons. There was a huge boom of like, fuck, mutant animals is in. What do you got? And it was like, Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Sure. Put it on the air. The biker mice from Mars. Put it on the air. Street sharks. Put it on the air. Like, it was just all these weird anthropomorphic mutant monsters that were some kind of human animal hybrid fighting against a mad scientist alien ninja. Like, there were so many different variations of that.
Yeah. And again, it's weird too because the Turtles, again, it was a parody, and I think the fact that they were anthropomorphic wasn't a mistake either, because it was like teenage mutant. That's like the X-Men, Daredevil. You get the ninja thing, but like, why are they turtles? Like, what was up with the turtle thing? And I know it's because I forget if it was Kevin Eastman or Peter Laird. I think it was Peter Laird who just drew like a silly little turtle for fun one day, and and there probably was nothing behind it, but I don't think it was a mistake because the quote unquote funny animal comics were really big in the 80s, even before the Turtles. Like, it was a big trend, for and part of it was because there was a resurgence and a return to popularity of like older comics and movies and TV shows from like the 60s, when you had like lots of anthropomorphic characters in like movies and Looney Tunes and stuff like that. And there was a big trend of it in comics. Even I think probably the most famous one was Fantagraphics, who are like the snootiest of all snooty comic publishers. They had a funny animal comic called Critters that ran for like, I don't know, 50 issues or something. Like, fucking Alan Moore wrote a story in it before he was famous, and it was where Usagi Yojimbo first appeared, was in Critters, and it was like, yeah, so they were parodying all kinds of stuff. So I know we're talking about it for a long time. I just think it's really funny when other people parody what was already a parody.
Oh yeah. Well, and from what I understand, and I could have this wrong. I'm sure one of our listeners will correct me if I am wrong. But I'm pretty sure that the story goes that Peter Laird he wanted to draw the most ridiculous animal as a ninja that he could think of.
Okay.
And he was like, because they were talking about Daredevil, and he was just like, well, yeah, I mean, ninjas are fast, they're stealthy, they're very agile. Turtles are not that at all,
Yeah.
So, and it's like, ha ha ha, wouldn't it be funny if it was a ninja turtle? Like, that's cool, and then they just kind of kept upping the ante. They kept passing the paper back and forth and adding little details, and then eventually, it was Ninja Turtles, and then they added the Teenage Mutant for like, it just sounded better, and they were like, wait, that really works, and then they played with it. But yeah, like, I just thought that was hilarious that it was literally one of those silly little things of like, what's the most ridiculous animal that I could pair with a ninja? And it's like, turtle.
Turtle. That's silly. But like I said, I don't give a fuck, But yeah, so I think we spent a long time talking about that, but like, whatever, man. Like, this is an indulgent podcast, and this is just a rental rant because that last fucking episode with the Arbor Day Massacre. Oh my God, it was so long. It was so long to record, a long final episode, a long edit, the worst fucking edit ever in the history of Raised by Rentals. That when you reminded me, you were like, hey, when should we record again? And I'm like, oh, fucking podcast, like, god damn it, we got to do a rental rant because I'm still pissed about
Yeah, and I remember when we were recording that, we both commented on we have to rein this in. We got to keep it normal. And then not only did we go off the rail several times, but we also had a lot of technological issues.
Yes.
And it was just like, what the fuck is happening? It's like this episode is cursed.
Yes, I absolutely. We don't got to get into the whole story, but yeah, it was just normal things of like needing to take breaks or like running out of time or having, to like hang on, let me come back to this or whatever. But yeah, just technological issues like weird sounds. A couple of strange noises made it through to the final edit just because I just we were talking and I couldn't like get rid of it, and it was and yeah, it just it was so bad. It was so bad to the point where even when I was editing it, I was running into trouble of like the fucking file was so big because I had so many cuts in it that even when I tried to
Mhm.
like split it up and save it into like smaller files, I was having trouble editing it. So every time I would go to make a change, it would spin for 4 minutes while it was like doing
Uh,
whatever. And I'm like, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning and I have to do this for another hour just to get to the halfway point because this shit has to come out on fucking Arbor Day, which is Friday. Like, holy shit, I can't wait for 4 or 5 minutes every time I make one tiny little change. And
right.
it dragged on and on and on. And just even the effort of trying to make it easier. Okay, let me cut this up into smaller pieces and save it in different files and then like clear the cache and reload it and then it'll move faster. But then I got to piece like 20 different pieces together and the final file was so lumberingly huge that I couldn't even save it to my fucking hard drive. So I was like, oh my
Oh,
God, I had to like move all the files off onto like Dropbox so it'd all be in the cloud. And then I get really nervous because I'm like, all my fucking eggs are in this basket and it was rough. Luckily only one actual mistake made it through to the final edit, which I did fix now, so fresh downloads won't have the mistake in it. But but it was so long that it took me days to re-listen to it after it came out, and then before I even noticed the mistake. And I'm like, fuck.
oh shit.
I hope that nobody caught that. I hope it was like such a quick little thing that nobody noticed it, but I noticed it and I couldn't leave it alone. So I was like, shit. Now I got to go back in and slice that like 12 seconds out and like put it back together and redo it.
Yeah, I definitely did not envy you having to edit that. I was like, oh god.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, it came out a little late. It was still Friday for me, even though it was 3 a.m. on Saturday morning. But it was still my Friday, so that shit
Yeah, exactly.
it counts as Arbor Day. But anyway, back to this one.
Oh
But
god.
yeah, we're just being self-indulgent now because it's like I couldn't do that one again. We couldn't do anything that was difficult, the next
No,
episode. Um,
no.
but so here's my next hot take. We're gonna change the subject. No more comics and properties. But here's one. I'm a fan of fantasy novels, right? I have a
Mm.
Robert Jordan Wheel of Time inspired tattoo. I held my own yesterday at the comic shop when I got into a conversation at the Free Comic Book Day little mini convention with a fantasy sci-fi uh, club that puts on a convention for almost 50 years now in Austin, and like these guys really know their shit. And I was kind of holding my own with them, talking about like bookstores in the 80s and shit. But anyway, so my cred here that like I know fantasy. That's another thing that I'm really into is fantasy novels. So that
Right.
being said, I don't understand why people think that J.R. Tolkien was such a great fucking writer.
Mm.
Gauntlet thrown. Sorry, pitchforks are coming back out again. um, and,
Actually agree with you on this.
well, and what I mean is, of course, he is a pillar in the history of fantasy, fiction in English. Of course, he is. Like what he accomplished with the Lord of the Rings is, it's incomparable. He was a pioneer. He was an early innovator. He was a super creative world builder and just a genius creative mind. He deserves his face on the Rushmore of fantasy authors. Absolutely. Of course he does. But as a writer, as a wordsmith, like the Lord of the Rings is not that great. Like it,
Yeah.
there were writers at the time, contemporary to him and still today, that I think would write circles around him just in terms of keeping me engaged in the narrative,
Hmm.
but that's one of those things that like I say it here in the safety of my home behind, this microphone and this podcast, but if I had brought it up yesterday with those like sci-fi fantasy, club guys, like they would have strung me up. you know?
Oh, absolutely. But again, I feel like there is a very strong difference between being a great idea man and being a great storyteller. And I feel like, Tolkien, like, obviously wonderful fucking ideas, great world builder, but his writing style was very dry. It feels very much like you're reading a textbook with a lot of that stuff.
Hmm.
Like, there's so much description about like the world and the language and all that, and it's like it just gets boring. um I honestly, I'll tell you one right now. You want to talk about pitchforks, fucking get ready. For me, that's Stan Lee.
Oh yeah.
Now, I don't get me wrong, I adore Stan Lee. He was a huge part of my fucking childhood. He created a bunch of the stuff that I'm still a huge fan of to this day. But, or I should say, he had a hand in creating, because he was not always the creator, even though he got sole credit for a lot of the stuff that he probably shouldn't have. But here's my argument on it. Like, while Stanley had great ideas and he was a part of great, phenomenal creations, his actual writing was just not that good. And I would like to cite when he took over for the his little stint of doing all of the DC characters in his version in the early 2000s, where it was like Stan Lee's Batman and Stan Lee's Superman and Stan Lee's Wonder Woman. They were awful.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
those comics are terribly written comics. Again, are the ideas fun? Yes. He's a great idea man. Or he created some wonderful worlds and creations, but he didn't know how to fucking tell a story. It was bad. It was
Yeah.
really bad writing.
It was awful. It was terrible. It was always terrible. Like
Hmm.
Stan Lee's a hype man. He's a marketer. He's a salesman. I
Yeah.
mean, and he deserves respect for that. And he took Marvel and comics in general to a place in pop culture that they had never been to before, and took him to new
Hmm.
heights. And like I think that he deserves his praise for that. But he doesn't deserve praise for being the writer and creator of these great comics, because he either didn't create them or co-created them with artists who don't get the credit, or he wrote them and they were fucking terrible.
Yeah, and a lot of times it was because, and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but they would do that thing where it's like the artist would pretty much write the story visually, and then Stan Lee would come in and fill in the word balloons.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like basically Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko is writing the story, and Stanley's like Excelsior, just
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Oh, if you ever want to like read a really good account of how that worked out, that's a pretty easy read. There's a great graphic novel that came out just a couple of years ago by Tom Scioli called Jack Kirby: The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and it's a comic book biography of Jack Kirby, and it goes into that whole period of him and Stan Lee working together and like their sort of creative relationship, and it was very kind of strained, and he wasn't getting credit for this or that. But anyway, it's a really interesting, if anyone out there doesn't really know the story about Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and other artists that Stan Lee worked with that co-created a lot of the characters that Stan Lee for some reason gets credit for.
that drives me crazy.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, and I don't know that I want to go down, this topic in detail, because I feel like we talked about comics a lot, but I mean, I'll say 90%. I'll give it that high of a number, maybe even higher than that. 90% plus of superhero comics made, let's say before the 90s. Some of them in the 90s count too, but we'll go before the 90s. The sort of classic old school comics. I think they're fucking painful to read. Just
Hmm.
painful to read. I think that there's a reason why the average American just assumed that comics were for kids for decades after that was actually true, because they were so terrible, just like mindless, shallow, thoughtless entertainment written by some dude who got a job because his uncle was the publisher at the company or some shit, and they were just like, yeah, sure, like you put the words in the word balloons, we don't give a fuck, kid.
Right.
And it's terrible. I have, as a big comic book fan, I have such a hard time trying to read pretty much any superhero comic from before the 90s. It like I said, it's 90+%, not 100%. I mean, there's Frank Miller's, there's Alan Moore's, there's other good writers out there, great guys in the history of comics who wrote great mainstream superhero books, but most of it was just fucking awful. And I don't understand why people I don't know, I think people collect old, like, let's say, Iron Man or Avengers comics because they're like art artifacts, but try to read that shit, ugh, never mind.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's fair to say.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Hell, even the artists that I like, Frank Miller's got a lot of shitty comics, and here's another hot take. Again, we're still on comics here, but I love Alan Moore. I think Alan Moore's a genius creative writer. He's written a lot of like weird ass shit and some stuff I cannot get behind because I think it's problematic. But in general, I'm a big fan. I got an Alan Moore tattoo, but he got his real rocket to stardom by doing Swamp Thing at DC in the early 80s, pre-Vertigo, like, bringing kind of a horror element to Swamp Thing. God, those fucking comics suck. And I think all of my like nerdy, snooty comic book snob friends are gonna come for me. I can hear them coming. They're coming because I just denigrated, their god. But I love Alan Moore, but fuck, man, those Swamp Thing comics are boring. Jesus Christ, I struggled to get through them. I read them like homework just because I was like, well, I should have read these, And when I
Right.
finally did, it took me 2 attempts. I finally made it to the end, and it was a slog through every fucking page.
That's fucking funny.
Oh,
See,
God.
and I've only read like a couple of like the stuff that was in like anthologies, like that one. God, I forget what Alan Moore comic it is, but it has like the vigilante stuff in there, and there's like one Swamp Thing comic in there.
Oh yeah,
Like
oh shit. The DC Universe by Alan Moore is the name of that collection.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a really good Swamp Thing story in there where he meets Superman. I love that story. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I've read that, but like I haven't really read the Alan Moore Swamp Thing run that everybody. And there's one of those things. We could go on about these topics for a very long time, but this is also one of those other things, kind of like the sports thing, where sometimes you don't want to admit, like, oh shit, I haven't read that yet, or I haven't seen that movie, or I haven't. And that's one of those things because everyone talks about the Alan Moore Swamp Thing, and it's like I've read Swamp Thing, I've read Alan Moore stories about Swamp Thing. Like I've read a couple little things, but I haven't read that run. And everyone talks about it like, if you haven't read it, oh my God, are you even a comic fan? Like that, it's like, shit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm not a comic fan then.
I know. Well, I'm sure that you watch a lot of movies that you don't necessarily want to for that reason. Like I read a lot of comics because it's homework. Like it's homework. Like when I'm reading comics for fun, I pretty regularly alternate between this is a comic that I'm reading because it's a good time and I'm enjoying my pastime, and then the very next comic I'm going to slog through this homework that I feel like I should have read, or I'm curious about it because it's some kind of classic, but I know it's going to be boring, but I force myself to do the homework and then I go back to the good stuff,
Exactly.
But yeah, like just to kind of wrap that thing, like the idea when I mentioned Tolkien before, it's like, yeah, I mean, he's on the Mount Rushmore for like being a pioneer, but that doesn't make him a good writer. I feel the exact same way about Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, even more so, because I don't think Dune or Frank Herbert belongs on any kind of Mount Rushmore for anything, even though Dune is like a groundbreaking sci-fi creation. I think there's a reason why it took so long for somebody to make a decent movie adaptation out of it, and even then they had to make it into 2 movies just to make sense of the tangle of the story, because the world building is phenomenal. You talk about Tolkien reading like a textbook. Frank Herbert's even more so. But his is like you're reading like a science journal, but it's interesting and exciting to learn this new scientific fact. But then when he starts telling the story about human beings, and there's like it's laughably amateur. It's awful. I'm sorry. Dune is a struggle. I don't fucking get it, dude. I really don't. But again, the ideas are absolutely solid. But but we mentioned like the Sex Pistols earlier, and think about that. Like the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, held the New York Dolls. You think about all these like pop and like subculture, alternative like groups from like the 70s. Like they created genres. But that doesn't mean that they were the best bands to ever do it. I'm sorry. Like I fucking love the Ramones, but are they the best punk band ever? No, absolutely not.
No.
That's silly. They were just some of the first. They were groundbreaking pioneers who paved the way for other people who were better musicians than them.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and it's like, I don't know. Personally, I love telling people that the Sex Pistols are a boy band, because they were put together. They were literally created. So they didn't form a band. A dude put them together because it's like, like we're gonna make a band. See, that's how I picture all producers talking.
Yeah.
But they're literally the punk version of like NSYNC.
Yeah.
They are that same exact thing. They are a group of men who somebody that had money was like, hey, we're going to make a band and you guys are going to be it.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Absolutely. But, they still, opened up a lot of people's eyes to like this new style of music they hadn't heard of. They didn't invent punk, they know it already existed. They already knew about it. They just popularized it, and that's okay. But, I can think, they deserve to be in the conversation as like, pioneers because they popularized it. That doesn't mean that they were good at it or they invented it or anything. It's like the Runaways is a good example of like the girl group alternative to that. Like the Runaways were put together by somebody who was like, hey, there's already two you girls here. Like, let's just get all these girls together and like it'll be great. It'll be like a gimmick, And so, but like Joan Jett and Lita Ford still fucking rock, But so like whatever. But at the same time, like the Runaways weren't the greatest ever either. But anyway, I just that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, you can be a pillar and a pioneer and a groundbreaker, but I get frustrated when people hold up those people as like, oh well, nobody will ever touch Tolkien. He's the best. Like, nobody will ever touch the Ramones. They were the best ever. And I'm like, yeah, but were they really? I mean, really?
Right. Exactly. And I think that's just one of those things we do as people. It's like everybody wants to classify things. We want to put things into categories. So it's like, of course, there has to be something at the top and something at the bottom. So we just kind of collectively agree like, oh, yeah, because this thing is well known. Clearly, that creator is at the top of the game. And it's like, not always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, just because you know who Stan Lee is doesn't mean he's the best comic writer out there. Just because you know who Tolkien is doesn't mean he's the best fantasy author out there.
Yeah, exactly right. But in certain social circumstances, I'm probably going to keep my opinion about Tolkien to myself. It's like,
oh, absolutely.
But anyway, yeah, so we probably should wrap it there. This was just a fun diversion, like I said, from the last episode, just something that was just a little bit more laid back. And even though we got ranty and negative about stuff, I'm glad we got a chance to do this. I thought it would just be a fun thing, to talk about. So, when we do these rental rants, we talk so much about like bitching about other fans that we hate, shitty toxic fans. And like when we did that Snobs Anonymous episode, it was fun to kind of be like, well, I'm kind of a shitty fan sometimes too. Like, let's talk about it. It's like,
absolutely.
It's like therapy. So this was me saying, you know what, like, like I'm gonna stand up and admit, some of this stuff that like I don't typically want to admit, and but it was a good time.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's one of those things that fans should be a little more aware of. We all have those biases. We all have those things where we're like, I don't agree with the popular opinion, but I keep it to myself, that type of thing. We all have those moments. So I think talking about it is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, it's good conversation. So maybe some people will find us online at Raise My Rentals on the socials, and leave us a podcast rating, right? Leave us a comment. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us why we're wrong.
Exactly, right. And tell me if this is a terrible segue into telling everybody that we belong to the Rad Pantheon, a super team of podcasters, artists, musicians, and all sorts of creative rad friends helping to spread the gospel of rad stuff. So if you like this show, go check out all of those guys as well. Come back, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Tell us what your embarrassing truth is. Like what's the thing that you're afraid to admit with your pop culture or your nerd friends or your fandom friends? Like what's the thing that you're afraid will make people pull out the pitchforks? I really want to know.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
So maybe I'll get my pitchfork ready. We'll see. We'll see if you come for my fandom. But I feel like my cosplay friends are going to be really angry at me. But if you are, let's talk about it. Okay. So,
Absolutely.
But if you're still here, if you stay with us for this long through this episode, thanks for tuning in once again to the Raise My Rentals program. If you had fun, visit us on those socials, drop us those lines, give us those comments, let us know what we should improve next time when we actually do an improv, because there's more coming this season. And with that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return some videotapes.
Black velvet and that little boy smile. Black velvet with that slow southern style. A new religion that'll bring you to your knees. Black velvet, if you please.
Torches! Get your torches! Pitchforks! Can't be an angry mob without pitchforks!
Cotton candy! Get your cotton candy! Can't throw right without cotton candy!